All right. So if you had to describe your life story in about 2 to 3 minutes or less, name if you want to tell me your name, where you're from, and then like the 3 to 5 significant bullet points of your life and how you got to a Zoom chat with a random stranger today. How would you do it, sir?
Well, my name is James Conrad. I grew up in the Seattle area, Vashon Island specifically, homeschooled, um, raised evangelical, and then became a complete apostate. Um, I went to a Lutheran college, and they taught me how to drink and chase girls.
There you go. Yeah, that's fair. Life
um,
lessons.
and then I went to grad school.
Hmm.
I got my PhD in Roman history, and I've just been floating around ever since.
Okay. Floating around. This is in the US, or do you live in, Europe? Do you want to go to Rome at some point or
I've been to Rome, I've
okay.
lived in Greece and in England, but I am currently back in the Seattle area.
Back in the Seattle area. Okay. Very cool. Nice. Well, that's a interesting, yeah, backstory. What made you pursue history in the PhD? What was the main motivating force with that?
All right, so I know you're on a time limit, but you just
Sure.
asked me about a story, and that's a
Sure.
dangerous thing to ask a historian.
Right. We'll go. We'll shoot.
Um, I hated history when I was growing up.
Right.
I was homeschooled. Uh, Basically, I was taught by my mother,
Mm-hmm.
and she didn't know anything about history. And so it was all names and dates. And I don't give a fuck about 1066.
Mm-hmm.
The Norman invasion doesn't have anything to do with my life. I
Yeah.
just don't care about that. When I was 18 years old, my first girlfriend broke up with me.
Mm.
Now, I was a huge nerd, and I still am.
Yeah.
So I went down to the bookstore and I explained the situation. My girlfriend just broke up with me and I needed distraction and all that kind of stuff. And I was looking for what do you have that's new? What do you have that can take my mind off this problem?
Mm.
Um, and they had just gotten in the paperback version of Colleen McCullough's First Man in Rome. Now, you may know Colleen McCullough from her book, The Thornbirds, which was made into a miniseries in the 80s.
Okay. Not really, but that's all right.
this
Proceed.
book, this book was about Marius and Sulla's relationship before they fell apart and fought the first Roman Civil War.
Mm.
And for whatever reason, reading that book showed me that those people in the past had no more idea about what was happening in their world than 18-year-old me
Mm.
had what was happening in mine.
Mm.
Uh, and in the back of the book, she included her sources. So I started reading those.
Mm-hmm.
And then I just started reading all kinds of Roman history. And one day I got a copy out of the library of um, Caesar's Gallic Wars. So that has on the left hand the Latin, and on the right hand the English. And I already told you I'm a huge nerd. I had been working on like Tolkien's Elvish, and
Mm-hmm.
I saw the Latin, and I was like, I have to learn to read this.
Wow.
6 months later, I was in college and they had a Latin course and I took it and I just went all the way through to the PhD.
Jeez. Okay. And did it help with
And
the breakup? Did it actually work? Distracting yourself?
Yeah.
That's
It's
fair.
if I can make a comment. I mean, I know we're limited on time, but
Sure.
so when we were together, she was atheist and she was intending to go to college at the UW.
Hmm.
And I was religious and I didn't know what I was going to do.
Okay.
After the breakup, I became atheist. She never went to college.
Hmm.
She married some guy named Sovereign and had a kid. I don't know who names their kid Sovereign.
Great question. Yeah, never heard that before.
Yeah, but she's never left the island.
She's never left. Okay. Two paths diverged and never reunited, I suppose. But okay. Well, that's interesting. I hope her life is sovereign somewhere in the world is all right. And that seems like you're doing pretty good yourself these days. So cool. And we'll jump right into the interview. We picked out a couple here. First question is going to be, excuse me, what is your most memorable dream?
There is a Irish mythological hero um, who is related to Achilles. It's basically the Indo-European um, heroic embodiment named Cuchulainn.
Okay.
And I suffer from sleep paralysis. Are you familiar with that?
I am. I've definitely heard. I have a good friend that has that.
Yeah, so you get into this semi-lucid state where you can't move, but you're somehow still aware of what's going on. So one day in my apartment, I entered that state and I saw Cuchulainn in my apartment.
Mm,
Um, Cuchulainn, he's basically the Hulk. He's a teenager uh, in the legend, and then he gets this battle fury that comes on him, and he just
mm,
explodes. One eye gets big, the other eye gets small. He gets this huge phallus that he uses to smash chariots in
wow.
battle. So I was in this semi-conscious state watching him toss my apartment.
Mm,
Um, and I knew who he was, and I knew what sleep paralysis was. So I was just like, well, I guess I'll watch the show.
mm,
And so he tossed the apartment. And after about 5 minutes, I heard somebody at my right ear say, "Tell me about your mother." And I looked over there, and there was Freud with the cigar and everything.
mm. On the couch and
And
everything.
I woke up screaming.
Hmm.
And the weirdest thing is that when I finally got up, my apartment had actually been tossed.
Oh, interesting. Yeah. Good. Do you sleepwalk as well? Maybe you were sleepwalking and tossing it around, and then you got into bed and had sleep paralysis upon waking. Maybe that was what happened. I don't know.
I've had one incidence of sleepwalking, but
Right.
sleepwalking and paralysis are related.
Right.
It's
Interesting.
it's the same switch in your brain.
Okay.
Um, the switch is to keep you from moving
Hmm.
while you're asleep.
Right. Right.
So if you wake up and the switch doesn't go off,
Hmm.
you're in paralysis.
Hmm. Hmm.
If the switch goes off and you're still asleep,
Ha.
then you're
Oh,
sleepwalking.
that's fascinating. I didn't know that. So I'm a big Radiolab podcast fan, and they had a whole episode on sleep. Like I don't know, 10 years ago. And they talk about, sleep disorders and stuff like that and sleepwalking. But wow, I had never heard about how that could be two sides of the same coin with a sleep disorder. That's very interesting, actually. Interesting. Okay. Usually my sleep issue is usually insomnia. It takes me quite a while to fall asleep. Once I'm asleep, I stay asleep generally, but the whole falling asleep thing is just my body does not like to shut down. I try to read before I go to bed. That seems to help, but I wish it was like a switch where I could just boom, be out, but never blessed with that, unfortunately. Okay. That's a very memorable dream. I had only known about Ireland and St. Patty's Day and St. Patrick, so I didn't know about anything about, other mythical or heroic figures, so that
Oh,
broadened my horizon.
it's the excuse me, Red Branch
Hmm.
myths.
Okay.
And it's fantastic.
Okay.
It's really a great set of legends.
Nice. It's interesting that like Hulk is, somewhat tied to stuff like that, I guess, and the tropes of, you know, um that mythical strength, I guess, or going to berserk mode and that kind of thing kind of reappear in our Marvel comedies or, comics today. So, cool. Second question is going to be, what is a taste that you acquired in adulthood that you didn't have as a child?
Um, as a child, I had quite a sweet tooth.
Hmm.
Um, Even into high school, I used to carry lemon drops in my pocket,
Okay.
and I'm not gonna lie, I used that to bait girls into conversations.
Sure.
Here, do you want a lemon drop? It's
It works.
um, well, I'm giving candy to girls is kind of sketchy,
Sugar
and
daddy, though. Plenty of
yeah,
people do it, right? Yours the OG sugar daddy, literal sugar daddy. Yeah.
um, I completely lost my taste for sweets. It's
Oh,
completely savory now,
okay.
and one of my favorite dishes, I don't make it that often,
Hmm.
is pork and apple pie.
Pork and apple pie, like in the same thing, or like,
Yeah,
wow. Well,
yeah, you make
apple
a
pie is sweet though, right?
well, the apple has certain sweetness, but the
Yeah,
pork has a lot of savory.
right, right. Wow.
And yeah, you make a mixture and then you put it
Okay.
in the pie dish and then bake it up. And it's just fantastic. It's marvelous.
Well, Thanksgiving's upon us. Maybe you should come over and bake that and see what that's like, because I'd be curious to see what that tastes like. Wow. Who gave you that idea? Is this an original idea?
Uh, my dad taught me how to make that. I don't know where
Okay.
he got it.
Wow.
But where do you live?
I'm in Northern California. Yeah.
Yeah,
So
I'm not coming down there.
not happening. Not happening. Washington's not too far, but also not gonna happen. Yeah. Um, Interesting. Okay, interesting. Yeah, I think I've acquired a taste for mushrooms as I've gotten older. That was the one as a kid. Couldn't do a mushroom at all on pizza, even nothing, but big fan now. So it happens.
Oh, um, lasagna. I
Hmm.
hated when I was young,
It
but then as I got older,
right.
I learned
Okay.
to love it.
Do you think Italian food is overrated, underrated, or properly rated in general?
I worked in an Italian restaurant.
Okay.
It is my primary go-to for cooking dinner.
Okay.
Um, so I'm going with underrated.
Underrated. Wow. I would say because everyone highly rates it. So you're saying it's even better than people's perceptions.
Yeah.
Fascinating. Okay. Good Italian. I could see that. I feel like the Olive Gardens of the world. I don't. Yeah, they
Oh
don't do it
no,
justice, right? Yeah.
Olive Garden is not Italian.
Right.
Don't. All right. I worked in an Italian restaurant. Olive Garden is
No.
not that.
Okay, that's funny. Yeah. Good enough. Yeah, but quite off the mark in terms of Michelin star restaurants. Yeah. Third question is gonna be, what is the most money you've ever won or lost gambling in your life?
I happened to be in Galway for the Galway horse race in 2005.
Mm,
I've never the most gambling I've ever done is like a $10 poker game.
okay,
You just buy in and somebody wins and they get enough to buy a case of beer and everyone's happy.
sure.
Um, but that horse race is the biggest race in Ireland.
Mm,
So I went out there and I was looking through the brochure about the horses. I told you I'm a historian.
hmm
I'm a classicist, which means I
mm,
read Latin and Greek.
okay.
Um, and one of the horses was named Anno Jubilo.
Yeah.
I'm like, oh, I know what that means. That means the year of Jubilee.
Okay.
Um, which, if you are familiar with Judaism, the year of Jubilee is when all the debts are automatically forgiven.
Right.
Happens every 7 years.
Right.
But I'm like, I know the name of that horse.
Yeah.
And in Galway, I don't think this is true in the US, but in Galway, they have a bet that's called both ways,
Okay.
where you pick three horses.
Mm,
And if one of your horses places first, second, or third,
right.
you win the bet.
Okay.
So I bet like 30 euro on that particular horse. That horse came in third, and I won 300 euro.
Ooh, pretty good return. Yeah.
And then I stayed at the track and I lost all of
Right. Right. Right.
it.
That's what my stats teacher taught me in high school. He said if you go into, poker or whatever, and you have $30 and you win whatever, say in your case 300, you put 30 back in your left pocket, and then you only play with the 270 in your right pocket. That way, no matter what, you're gonna come out with what you started with, right? So I've always remembered that. That way, you always separate what you began with and what you eventually will probably lose in the end. Yeah. Oh man. Yeah, horses have such great names. If you could name any kind of horse in a race, I guess it would depend on what the horse looked like. Is there any name, maybe a Latin name that you would choose? What's a very strong Latin name? What's like speed in Latin or something?
Caleritas.
That's a good name. That would be a good name for a horse. Caleritas, which means
Speed.
speed. Okay. Caleritas.
That's literally what you asked me.
Right. I didn't know if you were gonna go like a subtle offshoot of that or like directly literal, but you nailed it. Yeah. Caleritas. Okay. I because I don't know what speed is in. Oh, I guess rapido because I speak a little bit of Spanish, and so I'm trying to think like Latin and Spanish maybe a little bit similar, but Caleritas doesn't have anything in my mind to do with anything I know about speed in Spanish. So interesting word. Um, the language is fascinating like that. Sometimes it's not always directly similar, but cool. Okay, next one's gonna be, if you could only talk about one subject for the rest of your life, what would it be? And you can't say history.
Oh, You just shot me to the quick.
I know you gotta diversify your mindset here. No, not history in the least. You could pick one historical thing you would talk about and one non-historical thing you could talk about for the rest of your life. I'll give you both.
Um, I can talk a lot about Tolkien.
Mm,
Uh, I've already said I was working on Elvish when I was a teenager.
sure.
I'm a huge Tolkien fan. Uh, but that leads into my interest of history.
Hmm.
Um, and I'm not allowed to talk about that.
Exactly.
So,
It's off the table.
um, gosh, I'm looking over my bookshelf now.
Yeah. What have you been
Um,
reading lately?
Science fiction.
Yeah.
I'm a big fan of science fiction. I can talk for ages about Heinlein. He
Uh,
is, aside from being quite a perv,
mm,
super interesting.
okay.
Have you read any of him?
No, only sci-fi I've read is a little bit of Isaac Asimov. That's it.
Isaac Asimov is great as well.
Hmm.
The Foundation series was one of the things I was getting into when I was getting into history.
Right.
Um, but Heinlein,
Okay.
I, I,
Put him on the list.
I'm trying to remember the titles.
There been any movie adaptations or anything?
No, there haven't been. Um, gosh, the first Lazarus Long book.
Okay.
Um, Lazarus Long, the main character, clones himself, but changes the DNA so that he has two twin daughters,
Hmm.
and then he gets in a relationship with them.
Whoa. This guy is perf.
And then into Sail Beyond the Sunset, which is the sequel to that book,
Right.
he goes back in time and has a relationship with his mother.
Whoa. This is,
It's
I wonder if that's based on what's the I took Greek mythology in high school, or I actually did take in college too as one class, but the story of the guy that is a sculptor and he falls in love with his own sculpture. He creates this like beautiful figure of a woman and then she turns into a real woman and then like they get married or something. I would have to look that up. I
yeah,
I
I
bet
know that
I
story.
bet that's what his Himmler's like writing off of almost. That seems like a pretty interesting backdrop to that. But yeah, sci-fi, if you can create that one day with like gene editing, wow, that'd be a quite wild world to think about. Yeah, little Oedipus complex in there as well, it sounds like.
Yep.
A lot happening there. Right. Interesting. I'm gonna have to Google that story while you ask or while you answer the last question. But last question is gonna be, what is your favorite conspiracy theory?
Okay. This is my own conspiracy theory.
Okay.
I suspect we talked about my experience cooking and all that kind of stuff, right?
Right.
I suspect that people who write cookbooks purposely underspice their dishes so that whatever
Oh,
you cook at home is
yeah.
not going to be as good as what you get if you went to their restaurant.
Yeah. Huh. That so interesting. Yeah, so it's like a lobby just to make more money off of the restaurant industry kind of thing. Yeah.
Yeah. And I don't know anyone else that believes that conspiracy theory, but
Right.
having worked in restaurants and cooking on my own,
Right.
what those recipes give you is way underspiced.
Okay. Yeah.
And I think they have to be doing it on purpose.
If I ever see garlic in a recipe, I always multiply it by about 8. And that's like the appropriate level of garlic, because I always do that. I'm like, yep, that's not enough garlic. You got to at least eight factor that every time. So I could see what you're saying about the salt too. Yeah. That's cool. I've never had someone come up with like their unique conspiracy theory. I've never made up my own either. Maybe have a favorite one, but like I don't have a unique one. Right. That's fascinating. And but it makes sense with your background why you would think that. Yeah, I could be on board with that. I could be on board with that. I think undersalting is a big issue. Yeah.
Undersalting, underpeppering,
Mm-hmm.
um, putting the basil in at the wrong time. Like
Ah,
if you're doing something with basil, it should be
yeah.
going in like last step.
Okay.
Um,
Interesting.
but
Yeah.
a lot of recipes call for it to go in like when you've
Really.
got the oil in the pan and then you put the basil in,
Right.
and it's just going to ruin the basil.
Are you one of the cilantro tastes great people, or are you one of the cilantro you have the gene where it tastes like soap? Do you know?
Oh, I love cilantro.
You love cilantro. Okay. Because for some people it actually tastes like soap. So that's just wild to me. Same thing with asparagus. There's some people that have the gene that makes asparagus smell bad when you pee, and there's other people with a gene that can not detect that smell. So some people produce the smell and can't detect it, and some people have the opposite. So that's
I hate
interesting.
asparagus.
Do you? Ah, big fan. Big fan of
Yeah.
asparagus. Great for you. And Brussels sprouts. As an adult, that's an acquired taste. I used to hate those as a
Really?
kid.
Brussels sprouts?
Yeah, if you roast them
Really?
properly, they're great. Yeah. I'll die on that hill. I'll die on that hill at 10 times out of 10. Yeah. What's a vegetable you do like?
Um, so I love a Caesar salad.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that's romaine lettuce.
Right. It's a questionable vegetable though. That's more of a green, right? Just to
Well,
say.
okay, so what do you define as a vegetable?
Like something that grows like root vegetables or like like broccoli, asparagus, I don't know, carrots, like yeah, carrots are a vegetable. There's the weird ones like avocado, which is like technically a fruit. But when I think of
Well,
salads, I think like kale, that's not a those are greens, right? If I'm being technical.
if you're saying carrots, you're talking about root vegetables.
Right.
And I do like carrots,
Okay.
and I love potatoes.
Yes. Yep. God, I love potatoes too. What's the most versatile? Okay, with potatoes and eggs, what do you think is more versatile in cuisines?
Uh, eggs, probably.
Hmm.
You can mix them with almost anything.
Right. Yeah, and the dessert factor too. Yeah, they're in a lot of desserts. Yeah, but potatoes you can cook a lot of different ways too. But I like asking people that.
Um, yeah, a baked potato is just about the best thing
Hmm.
you can get. The bar down the street used to sell one for three
Hmm.
dollars,
Okay.
and yeah, so you get a pound of baked potato for
Right.
less than a beer.
Okay. Sure.
Um, yeah, and with the sour cream and the green onions and all the other stuff,
Yeah.
it's just fantastic.
Did a quick Google search. The Greek artist who sculpted figure was Pygmalion and Galatea, or however.
Pygmalion,
Yeah,
yes.
he fell in love with her after sculpting her. She came to life and all that. So yeah, I bet that sci-fi that you're talking about is kind of maybe loosely based off that. It's like Avatar being based off of John Smith, or
Do
Romeo
you
and
know what
Juliet, all
great movie was based on the Pygmalion story?
that. No, actually, I'll probably know it when you say it, but I can't think of it off the top of my head.
My Fair Lady with Audrey Hepburn.
Okay. Bit before my time. Audrey Hepburn, was she in West Side Story or something? No.
No,
Sound of
Roman
Music?
Holiday.
Roman Holiday. That name is very familiar. Audrey Hepburn. Was she? Oh, wait. Breakfast at Tiffany's? Is that her?
Yep, that's her
Okay,
too.
so that's her. Okay. Okay, interesting. Yeah, bit before my time, but
Yeah, and so the whole plot was, gosh, I'm gonna Google this.
yeah,
Uh, uh,
please do. We live in the 21st century for a reason, and that is among the most beneficial things about it is access to knowledge. Although it's making us more forgetful. It's just the trade-off.
oh, you're starting to sound like Plato
every
now.
every old person ever. Yeah. Was it Plato or Socrates who said like writing would ruin society? Yeah,
Yep.
that's hilarious. I just love that. Yeah. One of my favorite podcasts is it used to be called it's called Built for Tomorrow now, but I think it used to be called something else before. And his whole podcast is like the fear of every new technology ever, being the end of society, and then how it's like normal adoption is like great now for us. So that's a really good podcast, Built for Tomorrow. Yeah.
So My Fair Lady was based on a George Bernard Shaw's play
Mm.
called Pygmalion,
Okay. Huh.
and it was Rex Harrison and Audrey Hepburn.
Right.
And the plot is, on a bet, Rex Harrison's character tries to take this girl who was selling flowers off the street, Audrey
Mm-hmm.
Hepburn, and reform her into a proper English lady.
Mm. Okay.
And in the course of that process, he falls in love with her, and
Yeah,
in the end, they get married.
whole thing. Okay. Interesting.
It's a good
Um,
movie.
yeah, I definitely should check that out. I haven't seen quite I would say like the most famous movies that I haven't seen are probably any of the Godfathers, Scarface, Grease. Those are like the some of the bigger ones. Everyone's like, you've never seen them, kind of thing. But
I'm giving you homework, right?
okay, right.
You know I'm a teacher, right?
You are right. What
All
is the
right.
homework?
Watch the fucking Godfather.
What's the Godfather? Oh, okay. I gotta do that. Yes.
Yep.
There's probably so many historical backdrops to it. It's such a big part of culture. So that is a good homework. Your final question for homework in this, I guess, podcast is gonna be, if you could ask a stranger, you're in my shoes, you could ask a stranger any question in the world. You can drum up an imaginary stranger off the street, or this could be generic, or have someone, something in mind. But if you could ask a stranger any question in the world, nothing was too superficial or deep, what would you ask, and what would you want to know about your fellow human?
What is your meaning of life?
That's good. I like how you say your meaning of life. Why do you say your, not the meaning? You just think
I'm
there's no
sorry.
you. I was gonna say I like how you say your meaning and not what is the meaning. Is there any specific reason you use that wording?
Um, I was trying to avoid Douglas Adams. The meaning of life is
Mm,
42.
right, right,
And I'm asking you. I'm
right.
not asking the universe. I
Exactly.
agree. The meaning of life for the universe is
Is
42,
42.
but that's not necessarily what your meaning is.
Yeah. But we are the universe's mode of itself of knowing itself, right? So we are the universe. So maybe the answer is 42. I don't know.
Are you familiar with Hitchhiker's Guide?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. No, I have read it. Yeah, way back in high school. But um that's a good one. That is a good one. What is your meaning of life, or what motivates you to do what you're doing?
Are you going to
Um,
answer me?
I would say my meaning. Okay, I didn't know we were going on the spot. My meaning of life, aside from interviewing 1,000 people, just because that's a number that came to me. I think my meaning of life, ultimately, like my vision, is just to be the kind of guy that if I have like a general fear of doing something, I like reach towards that. Like whatever I'm fearing in life, that's the general direction I know I need to be going. So if there's something that keeps like weighing heavily on me, I just want to be known as the guy that pursues challenges, and whether that's physical, mental, or whatever, career wise. My meaning is to just push
Hmm.
myself to the limit. It's often results in physical challenges, doing marathons, triathlons, lifting a certain amount of weight. But my meaning is to just become better as a human over time by challenging myself and pursuing what makes me afraid, basically, at my gut level.
Do you box?
I don't. I used to wrestle in high school, and I'm gonna get back into or get into martial arts and Brazilian jiu-jitsu hopefully in this next year. So no boxing. Just boxing for cardio, but not like standard, like learning how to fight.
I understand what you're talking about when you say challenging yourself.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Boxing for me does that.
That's cool.
Um,
Yeah.
I don't like every boxing gym I've been to.
Right.
A lot of places have their stars,
Okay.
and they use their less than the stars as punching bags for
Mm.
their stars to practice on.
Yeah. Right.
And
Right.
I don't like that environment.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
but there's a place here in Seattle that I really enjoyed. And I actually sparred with an Olympic boxer, Queen Underwood,
Okay.
and she could have totally killed me if she wanted to.
Right.
And she just pulled all of her punches
Mm.
for a round for 3 minutes, and I couldn't touch her.
Right.
And that kind of environment, I think, is much more conducive to learning the sport
Yeah.
and not getting hurt.
Yeah. That is a fine line right there. We're at the 1 minute warning here, so we'll kind of sign off here in a second. But I definitely appreciate the time for talking to me in the interview today. Any final words for the audience, or anything you want to say?
I'm just really happy to have this experience, and I appreciate your time and your interest in me
Yeah,
that I don't totally understand.
I'm interested in strangers. That's right. I'm weird like that.
um, and when the video is done, email me a link so I can send it to my family.
You got it. You got it. Memorialized for all time. To everybody out there listening, I thank you for the support. And this is Tyler telling you to go talk to a stranger. Peace.